Religious extremists also use blasphemy laws to discriminate against religious minorities, and this brings me to the third part of the presentation. Experts have described blasphemy laws in some countries as being a form of legalized discrimination. Persons targeted include members of the majority religious group who are seen to be questioning religious doctrine or failing to adhere to the state-sanctioned interpretations of religious doctrine. They include members of minority groups, such as Christians, or of sects considered deviant or heretical by governments in power. The breakdown of persons charged with blasphemy in Pakistan highlights the discriminatory nature of these laws. Ahmadiyya and Christians make up less than 2% of Pakistan's population, yet almost 50% of the more than 900 prosecutions for blasphemy in the past 2 decades have been against Christians and Ahmadiyya. It is important to note, and this to me was also another surprising finding, that the other 50% of prosecutions were against Muslims. So while they are very discriminatory in their impact and application, Muslims are not exempt, and blasphemy charges, and in fact in some cases make up the majority of blasphemy prosecutions. In some countries, discrimination is inherent in the laws themselves, when the laws protect only one religion from insult or offense, leading to de jure discrimination. And in other countries, though the laws are protecting all religions, the way that they are applied is that they actually only protect one religion, usually the dominant or majority religion. And this is seen in Greece, where the law protects all religions, but really only cases are ever brought by the Eastern Orthodox Church. In weak democracies with poor adherence to the rule of law, this discrimination is often accompanied by a general climate of intolerance for religious diversity, sometimes facilitated by those in power and almost always exacerbating sectarian tensions. As one Pakistani scholar has written, Ahmed S. Akbar, quote, "In the application of blasphemy laws, intolerance has fed on intolerance." Vigilante groups have invoked blasphemy laws to instigate and justify attacks on religious minorities. There are many examples of communal violence triggered by a blasphemy accusation in the report. One is in 2008, an Indonesian school teacher, Wilhelmina Holla, in Masohi in central Maluku, was rumored to have insulted Islam in a private tutoring session. 5 days after the allegations surfaced, an angry mob of between 300 and 500 gathered in the town of Masohi, where the alleged incident took place, burning churches, a health clinic, and at least 67 homes. Holla was arrested and tried and sentenced to 1 year in prison. Sometimes police are complicit in this kind of mob violence. In August 2009, there was an outbreak of Muslim-Christian violence in the town of Godhra, Pakistan, that was reportedly triggered by an accusation that some Christians had burned the Quran. A government inquiry into the incident, and as well as an NGO investigation, both found that in fact the attack was planned well in advance, and that a police contingent in the area did nothing to prevent or stop the violence, which left 7 Christians dead and more than 50 homes burned. Sometimes perpetrators of this kind of violence enjoy impunity. For example, in Pakistan, there was a shopkeeper named Imran Masi who was accused by a neighboring vendor of burning a Quran. The vendor proceeded to beat him. Other vendors in the marketplace joined in on the beating. He was quite severely hurt. Police eventually arrived on the scene and broke up the altercation and arrested Masi for blasphemy, and none of the assailants were arrested. Blasphemy laws also make it possible for governments and religious institutions to impose their interpretations of state-sanctioned religions on everyone. One of the fundamental problems with blasphemy is that it necessitates the determination of what is orthodox and what constitutes an offense to that orthodoxy. But who gets to decide this, and with what consequences for freedom of religion? Theological dissidents, those choosing to practice their religion differently than the state-sanctioned interpretations, or not to practice at all, have been targeted under blasphemy laws. In Algeria, there have been a number of cases over the last 3 years of persons being arrested and prosecuted for blasphemy for failing to fast during Ramadan. In Malaysia, people have been arrested by religious police for drinking alcohol in bars and charged with insulting religion. So blasphemy laws give governments broad powers to impose a particular religious interpretation to the severe detriment of freedom of religion or freedom from religion. This has also led to certain religious groups, particularly Islamic sects, being banned for being deviant or heretical. The plight of the Ahmadiyya is a notable example of this. Ahmadiyas consider themselves Muslim but differ from other forms of Islam in their doctrinal beliefs, and for this they are considered heretical in many countries. In Pakistan, the practicing of the Ahmadiyya faith is criminalized as a form of blasphemy, and in Indonesia the religion has been effectively banned in some provinces, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this from Rini. In Malaysia, so as a result of this deviant or heretical status imposed by governments, Ahmadis are discriminated against, persecuted for their beliefs, and have their right to freedom of religion severely interfered with. In Malaysia, over 50 religious groups have been deemed deviant by the country's Department of Islamic Affairs. And individuals have been arrested and convicted under blasphemy provisions for deviancy. One example is the case of Abdul Kahar Ahmed, who was arrested by the religious police for practicing and teaching a, quote, deviant form of Islam. He had claimed to be an Islamic prophet, an offense of blasphemy under the Sharia statutes in Malaysia, state level. He was arrested in September 2009, charged with 5 counts of deviationist teachings, including blasphemy and for spreading false belief. In October, he was found guilty, October 2009, he was found guilty, sentenced to 10 years imprisonment and 6 strokes of the cane, and a large fine. The determination of deviant and orthodox pits religious groups against one another, fueling religious extremism and exacerbating religious intolerance and sectarian strife. To conclude, I think it's quite clear that blasphemy laws have a multifaceted and very negative impact on human rights. And if this is the case at the domestic level, what can we expect from a similar law at the international level? And with that, I'll close and turn over to Rini. Thank you.